guys, what is up? Welcome, and thanks for clicking on the video. Today I'm going to be comparing A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones to The Wheel of Time. Why? Well, because the Game of Thrones series recently ended, and the hype is already starting to build for Amazon's upcoming Wheel of Time series, and it's sure to be a big hit. So, I figured that I would compare these two fantasy juggernauts on 5 key points to see which one comes out on top. Got it? Good. Let's get into it. First up on the list are the main protagonists. For the sake of this discussion, the Wheel of Time protagonists that we'll be looking at will include the original group from the Eye of the World, Rand, Mat, Perrin, Egwene, Moiraine, Tom, and Lan, as well as Siuan, Min, Elaine, and Aviendha. Apologies if I butchered any of those names. On the A Song of Ice and Fire side, we'll be looking at Jon, Dany, Tyrion, Jaime, Sansa, Bran, and Arya. Unfortunately, I don't want this to be an hour-long video, so we don't have time to be looking at each of these characters individually, unfair though that may be. Instead, what we're going to do is look at the most popular character from each series and then compare the rest as a collective. From the Wheel of Time list, I think it's pretty simple to conclude that Mat and his delightful bottom are far and away the best character, I mean at least after book 2 anyways. His point of view perspective is definitely the funniest that I've ever read, while his plot lines always feature exciting antagonists, deeply personal stakes, and not to mention, his interactions with any other main character are always pure gold. The best way to showcase his greatness, though, is to remember that he spent an entire book with a traveling circus, and all of these chapters, they had no business being anything other than a series low point and absolute garbage, but instead, they brought a brilliant combination of humor and tension as Mat struggled to escape from the Shan while navigating towards Tuon's affections. On the A Song of Ice and Fire side, I think that Tyrion is the unanimous fan favorite. He's witty, struggles with morality, has a complicated past, and he's on a journey to carve out a better future for both himself and the common people. In a genre where larger-than-life characters are the norm, Tyrion's serious and numerous shortfallings and persistence to overcome them make him uniquely relatable, and diving into his point of view is consistently a high point throughout the entire series. Especially during his time as Hand to Joffrey, when he so successfully maneuvers amongst the cesspool of backstabbing created by Littlefinger, Varys, and the other competing houses. When it comes to the rest of the characters on these lists, though, I would say that the groups are more or less equal, if you consider the ending from Game of Thrones to be canon anyways, in regards to character development, which I believe George R.R. Martin more or less said it was. For instance, Rand and Jon are basically the same person. Daenerys is probably more interesting than Egwene, but certainly less so than Moiraine. Jaime is a better character than Lan or Tom, but Lan and Tom and even Ny'naeve have more interesting plot and perspective than characters like Sansa, and while Arya is badass, nothing she does is on par with Lan's duel with Demandred, and if Bran finishes in the books like he does in the show, then I think it's safe to say that he's easily the worst character on the list. He finishes with no emotions, and his whole plot was pointless. Looking at it all together, it's definitely a close call, but I've got to go with Mat and his humorous charm over Tyrion's witty jabs. Wheel of Time wins this round, on to the next. For the second round, I'll be looking at antagonists. The bad guys. The Oogie Boogie Man, that the main characters gotta flick off their finger or face certain doom. Like everything in Wheel of Time, from books to countries to colloquialisms, when it comes to antagonists, there are a lot. Named antagonists easily number over 50 between Shaitan and his 13 Forsaken, and all of their lackeys, Pat and Fane, the Black Ajah, ordinary Dark Friends, and even prominent Xianshan. But A Song of Ice and Fire lacks in quantity, it makes up for in quality. Villains like Tywin, Cersei Lannister, Roose and Ramsay Bolton, Euron Greyjoy, and the mysterious Great Other bring far more intelligence and intrigue and mystery to the table than any of their Wheel of Time counterparts by a long shot. Seriously, the main antagonists of A Song of Ice and Fire make ruthless cruelty and stoic calculation look dull and routine. For example, until his unforeseeable death, Tywin uses his position as the head of the strongest and wealthiest house to consistently seize power, whether it's through the Red Wedding, arranging a marriage with House Tyrell, or even convicting his own son of murder. A murder that he knew he didn't commit. So long as it strengthens the house, he will do it. But this ruthless and effective pursuit of power isn't even unique to Tywin, not by any means. Roose betrays Robb to become Warden of the North, Euron kills Balon to become King of the Iron Islands, and Ramsay not only betrays Roose, but finds twisted pleasure in doing so. Meanwhile, in Wheel of Time, the closest things we get to competent villains are Shamael and Demandred and Messiah, which is actually a really harsh criticism considering that there are literally theories going around that Ishamael was actually trying to lose. I mean, Messiah was absent until book 13 and Demandred until book 14. If your best villains aren't showing up until the series, that means your series has a couple of issues. Of course, this isn't to say that the villains weren't engaging and at times even fascinating characters. Rather, they just simply were bad at villaining. It really was not their true calling. Maybe they should have tried mercantilism. Here it's profitable. Anyways, though, I could go on for days talking about the villains from either series because I love them all so much, but comparing them to each other, it just feels mean. The Song of Ice and Fire villains are just simply in another league when it comes to getting a job done and creating a real sense of danger. And for that reason, the answer is clear. Song of Ice and Fire wins this round, bringing the score to 1-1. On to the next. Side characters. Everybody's favorite. Between both series, there are literally thousands of side characters. More than 1,500 in Wheel of Time alone. So actually going through them all would be pretty much impossible. Therefore, I have decided to instead just look at the major minor characters. I know, doing this will exclude some fan favorites like Patchface and Hodor from Game of Thrones, or Telmanis and Elysian from Wheel of Time, but we gotta do what we gotta do. So, from Wheel of Time, I'll be looking at Leanne, Leandrin, Aleda, Logain, Andral, Pavara, Time, Varen, Katswane, Ames, Soralea, Julin, Hopper, Elias, Gowan, Gallad, Phile, Berlain, Leal, Bale, Ulver, and Noel. Quite the list. From A Song of Ice and Fire, it will include Baelish, Varys, Renly, Stannis, Melisandre, Grey Worm, Missandei, Brienne, Theon, Ned, Robb, Jojen, Sandor, Jaqen-H'ghar, Jeor, Victarion, and Young Griff. As you probably noticed though, even this list of major minor characters is still way too long, so, like with the main characters, I'm going to be looking at the pinnacle of each list, and then comparing the rest as a whole, bottom feeders as they are. Picking a best side character from Wheel of Time is actually really tough because of how great they all are and how many of them there are, but I think I'm going to need to go with Varen because she was there since Book 2, remained a relatively consistent presence until Book 14, had one of the more interesting personalities from a group of mostly single-note characters, and most of all, because she was part of one of the most crazy plot twists that I've ever read in a fantasy series, and I don't want to spoil anything for those of you who haven't read the series, but let me just say that this was one of the best reveals that I have read for 3 reasons. First, it was totally unexpected. Even though there were a few hints to it in the earlier books, there were probably even more hints that the exact opposite was true, meaning that RJ purposefully leaves you wondering for thousands of pages what exactly is going on with Varen. Secondly, it has a real and serious impact on the plot and book's conclusion, which is pretty rare for a minor character. And third, it was so emotionally hard-hitting that I actually had to put the book down for a couple minutes just to decompress. But how does Varen compare to the rival geniuses from A Song of Ice and Fire? You know, Peter Baelish, aka Littlefinger, and Varys. I mean, this might not be a fair comparison, being that it's 2 against 1, but where these two are so similar and what makes them special, I really just could not pick only one. Both are commonly thought of among fans and characters alike as the number 1 and 2 players at the Game of Thrones. Their schemes run so deep that they're actually the impetus for the entire human plot that the books have shown us thus far. I mean, by saving Dany and arranging a marriage to Drogo, Varys is actually responsible for the entire political situation in Essos, and meanwhile, Robert would probably still be king of Westeros had Littlefinger not killed Jon Arryn, and then told Ned the Lannisters were the culprits. Now 5 books in, the messes that they've made have completely unraveled civilized society as the Westerosi and the Essosi, as the Essosi knew it, but entirely unsurprisingly, they maneuvered their way to becoming better off for it. Even now, we can only guess at their true designs and how deep their schemes actually run. Now, as far as the rest of the characters go, I think that there is a clear difference between them. In Wheel of Time, side characters seemingly exist only to support the main characters, while in A Song of Ice and Fire, they have their own goals, their own purpose, they are their own person. Even though Wheel of Time characters like Gallad, Julin, Bale, and even Aleda are all entertaining, unique, and dynamic, but without the main characters, it's really kind of hard to see them doing anything of much consequence. In A Song of Ice and Fire, though, the side characters are clearly the main characters of their own stories. Stannis is the rightful king. Melisandre is here to save the world. Robb is here to take revenge. Victarion has to foil Euron's evil plot. For this reason, I have to give it to A Song of Ice and Fire. Score is now 2-1. Thrones takes the lead. But how long will that lead last? Because now we're on to world building. When it comes to world building, George R. R. Martin does a great job building the lands of Westeros and Essos, as well as all the characters and history that dwells within them. Tales of long-dead monsters, ancient heroes, dead dynasties, lost religions, it all permeates through the text of this epic tale. The themes are creative, the stories are believable, and the intrigue that they create is something that no ordinary author would ever be capable of. Maegor the Cruel, Baelor the Breasted, Aegon the Conqueror, Bran the Broken, the Children of the Forest, the Others, the Giants, Dragons, Warlocks, Magic, A Song of Ice and Fire has it all, and if it were up against any other series than Wheel of Time or maybe Lord of the Rings, it would have a very serious chance of coming out on top this round. But the fact of the matter is that we are comparing it to Wheel of Time, and when it comes to world building, I don't think any fantasy or even any work of fiction, period, can match this work. I mean, shit. Even the real world might lose to Robert Jordan when it comes to a contest of world building. To start off, and really I don't even know where to start off, but to start, Jordan does an excellent job at crafting the more traditional elements of fantasy world building. He has almost mythical dead civilizations from ages past, ancient nations like Manetheren, legendary heroes like Arthur Hawkwing, various non-human races and their histories with humanity, complex political systems and established nations, a fleshed out magic system. I mean, for most authors in fantasy series, that probably sounds like an exhaustive collection of world building elements, but for RJ, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the fancy and eye-catching mysteries of legends, heroes, and fantastical elements lies the true depth of RJ's world building, which is to say that he fills in all the blanks when it comes to human civilization that other novelists would leave empty. For instance, I don't think any book I've read has ever made me as curious about an in-story book as Wheel of Time did to me with Tales of Jane Farstrider. Nor have I ever read a book that has paid as much attention to the cultural differences between countries as I have in Wheel of Time. From the drawling speech of the Seanchan and the particular way the Dako Valley dressed, to the exposed breast knife of the Altarans, the thatched roofs of the two rivers, to the rigid defenses of Saldia, and who could forget that Illionaire accent? I must say, it do be charming and memorable. Because of all this, and so much more, Wheel of Time wins this round, no contest. The score is now 2-2, all tied up for the last round. Which brings us to the plot. This is a big one. For a lot of people, the main plot and how well it blends with various side plots is of paramount importance. Myself personally, I think that's probably tied for the most important aspect of a story with the characters. But, unlike characters, plots are quite difficult to compare and evaluate, especially when they're as different as these two. Even still, we have a task before us, so we may as well give it our best shot. The Wheel of Time plot is probably best thought of as an improved or at least expanded upon rendition of Lord of the Rings, which is to say that it's very much, down to its core, a fantasy plot. I could get into all the similarities between Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings, including the often cited, but completely erroneous, Murdriad equals Nazgul, but I'll save that for another video. But it is true that the two books see a lot of similarities. I mean, especially in the main plot. A small group of friends, chosen ones if you will, are suddenly called out of their quiet lives by a mage to embark on an existential quest against the forces of evil. Pretty straightforward stuff. But just like in Lord of the Rings, the plot quickly thickens as other elements are added to the fray. In fact, after the first book, most of the main characters separate and lead their own respective plot lines that are completely independent from the others, despite the universal connection that they all share to the war against the Shadow. So, at its very core, Wheel of Time is just like countless other fantasy stories where good must do battle with evil. But what makes it so special is the execution. The memorable protagonists, the despicable antagonists, the beautiful and romantic settings, the epic scope of everything from the stakes, to the magic, to the personalities, to the conflicts. When it comes to the classic fantasy, no one has ever done it better. But that doesn't mean Wheel of Time has a Song of Ice and Fire beat, and that's because A Song of Ice and Fire is different from Wheel of Time, down to and including the core. I mean, where Robert Jordan is like a Renaissance architect, painstakingly designing an intricate world and plot down to the most minute details, George R. R. Martin is the gardener, planting the seeds that are his characters and passively watching them grow into the entangled forest that becomes the Paul. The product of George R. R. Martin's method is a grim world, devoid of the rose-colored tint that permeates through Jordan's work. A forerunner of the grimdark genre, the plot is about as realistic as it gets when it comes to fantasy, not only because magical elements have a very weak presence in the story, but also because main character plot armor is basically non-existent and a great deal of fan-favorite characters are killed off as unceremoniously as extras. Furthermore, A Song of Ice and Fire is a very character-driven narrative, most unlike that of Wheel of Time. At its core then, A Song of Ice and Fire's plot is the product of two rules. All the characters are driven by their own motivations and always act true to themselves, and there is none or very little plot armor for these characters. From there, George R. R. Martin drops the characters into the setting of Westeros and Essos, adds a little water, and leaves them to their own devices. This method eliminates the reader's preconceived notion that the good guy will always triumph, and creates a complex world of mystery and deceit, where the ultimate conclusion can really only be guessed at. Consequently, the stakes always feel greater than they otherwise would if presented by a lesser author's hand. Villains are more frightening, and our heroes are just mortals. Every action has consequences. You don't know who could die. You don't know if the villain's gonna win, if the good guy's gonna win, who else is gonna take the throne, who might just suddenly jump in where they have no business being. Every character has their own motivations, and you can only guess at them. There is no shadow for everyone to unite against. This is every man for himself, and because of that, it's just as complicated as the real world, meaning you are left with a thumb up your ass and no idea which way is west. So, with both plots described, it's time to choose. The ultimate fantasy epic of good versus evil, or the complexity, mystery, and gravitas of a fantasy soap opera. Personally, I actually do prefer the former, but from a technical storytelling, writing, and creative standpoint, I have to give it to A Song of Ice and Fire. So, A Song of Ice and Fire wins it all, 3-2. Alright, thanks for watching my video. Before I go, I just want to add that even though A Song of Ice and Fire won this comparison, I do have to say that I still prefer Wheel of Time. There's just something about an extra long fantasy epic that makes my hair stand on end. It's hard to describe, but it's kind of like standing on a super tall cliff while staring out at the ocean. Anyways, be sure to comment down below your thoughts on either series, my comparison, how you could compare them, or anything else. I look forward to hearing from you. Alright, catch you later!